Hey folks, Leonard B. Lawson here, the car guru, and back from vacation. It took 7 hours to get to Hilton Head from Upper East Tennessee. It took almost 9 hours to get back. Same road, I-95 to I-26. It was just the traffic was unbelievable coming back. I guarantee that we sat either totally still or just barely moving on the interstate for at least an hour and 45 minutes. It was frustrating. I was able to maintain some degree of sanity because we were listening to Dateline Murder Mysteries. Yes, we could do that coming back because we had no small children in the back. All the small children were riding in other vehicles, my other grandkids. So that made it somewhat bearable. But what's really frustrating is the fact you get in these long delays and then you get to the end of it where the traffic starts moving again and there's nothing there. Nothing. Not a wreck, thank goodness. Well, I take that back. On 2 different occasions, out of the probably 10 times we had to stop, on 2 there was a police car, had somebody pulled over. But why does everybody slow down for that? Well, I guess you're supposed to a degree, but it shouldn't back things up 8 miles, should it? I know the cause of it. It's the cell phone. Because when people get slowed down, they have time to reach for their phone and check on everything, and then that causes delays. When you have 1,000 people in line and all of them are doing that, or most of them, then yeah, it's going to delay getting started again. Back it up 8 miles. But I'm over that now because I am back. I did do a lot of research while I was on vacation. Why'd you do research? Well, because I get bored on vacation. I can only take so much of doing nothing, like going to the beach, sitting there, doing nothing. Coming back to the house, sitting there, doing nothing. It gets boring. So I do something. I take a lot of magazines to read, and I do some research online. So here's what I found out. I found out one thing is that people are loving the Ford Maverick truck. Nationwide sales are close to 150,000. This is a home run for a brand new segment. You may have thought that small trucks always existed. They did. Do you remember the Love truck? Who made that? That was a Chevrolet. That was the first parts truck that we had at Lawson Chevrolet back in the early 70s. It was a Chevy Love. That's where I learned to drive a manual transmission. And so it was a piece of crap, pretty much. The seats, they basically tore to shreds just from sitting on them. But it got the job done. It was made by Isuzu. Okay, so what did Ford have as a small truck? And this is when small trucks were actually small trucks before they became mid-sized trucks. The Ford, no, they didn't have the Ranger. It was called the Ford Courier. Do you remember that? Who made it? Not many people know the answer to this question, unless you Google it. Mazda. Why did Mazda make it? Well, because Ford didn't have the plant capacity to make it. And Mazda and several other companies like Isuzu could make them cheap enough that they could afford the chicken tax. Yeah, that's what it was called, the chicken tax. You know why it's called the chicken tax? Well, it's 25% tariff on all small trucks or any trucks, any commercial vehicles coming out of Europe. And Lyndon Baines Johnson, he was the president of the United States after Kennedy got assassinated, and then he got elected for a second term. He was all upset because the Europeans had finally recovered from World War II to a certain degree, and they wanted to raise their own chickens. But our farmers were really addicted to selling a lot of our chickens to the Europeans. And we could sell our chickens cheaper than they could sell their chickens. We could actually raise the chickens, put them on a ship, send them over to Europe, and sell them to their people for less than the Europeans can do it. Well, they got tired of that once they recovered a little bit, so they wanted a tariff put on imported chickens of 25%. So Lyndon Baines Johnson said, okay, we'll show you. We're going to put a 25% tariff on your imported vehicles. Not all cars, but just trucks. And they did, 25%. And they called it the chicken tax. So if you're playing Jeopardy or something, some kind of a word game, and that comes up, it's a good trivia question. What is the chicken tax? Now you know the answer. Okay, I'll be back in just 1 minute. As I was saying, the chicken tax was a problem, and it really became a problem when the trucks started getting more and more expensive. So all the domestic manufacturers said, well, we're not going to buy these trucks from overseas anymore. They don't meet the safety standards. They don't meet the emission standards. In order for them to meet those standards, we're going to have to spend a whole lot of money. And then you add the 25% chicken tax on top of that. So we're just going to start building them ourselves. Dodge had an imported truck. It was built by Mitsubishi, and I think they called it the Ram Charger. I think it was the first actual use of the term Ram when it comes to Dodge trucks. But it didn't sell very good. So anyway, the domestic manufacturers decided to come out with some small trucks that they could build. In the US of A, the Chevrolet came out with the Chevy S10. There's still some of those around Greene County, Tennessee. I see them occasionally. Ford came out with the Ranger. Let's see. Dodge, they were late to the game. They started the midsize truck craze. Yes, they are responsible for that when they came out with the Dodge Dakota, and it was a really good seller. People said, that truck's got more room. Even has a V8 engine if we want it. It was a gas hog, but people didn't care back then when gas was cheaper, and they sold really well. Well, then Chevrolet and Ford took notice and said, hey, wait a minute, we need to make these trucks bigger. Chevrolet even changed the name of theirs to the Colorado, and I think it's still called the Colorado, and then GMC came out with the Canyon, and Ford just kept building Rangers. You know, they even let Mazda sell a version of the Ranger because Mazda could not import their wonderful B2000 pickup truck. We loved those trucks. We would sell between 20 and 30 of those a month back in the mid-'80s. But they, again, didn't meet the standards, and the chicken tax was a problem. So Mazda needed a truck, and Ford owned 30% of Mazda at that time. They said, hey, we'll just build a Ranger, sell it to Mazda, and they can call it whatever they want to. And they did. They called it the Mazda B2300 was the four-cylinder, B3000 was a small V6, and B4000 was a larger V6, all of them based on the Ford chassis. So, you know, when these companies are consolidated, you know, when you have one big company owns another big company, they can share platforms. That's really happening right now on a larger scale with a company called Stellantis. You know, when you buy a Dodge, a Chrysler, I started to say Plymouth, but they've been gone for a while, or a Ram, or a Jeep, for that matter, do you realize that you're buying a foreign-owned vehicle? The headquarters for Stellantis, who owns all of those brands, is in the Netherlands. And most people don't even know where that is. I'm not sure I do. I know it's Northern Europe. I could point it out on a map. I'm pretty good with geography. But, yeah, the only true domestic makers, well, I started to say Ford and General Motors, but they import a lot of vehicles. Importing less now because of all the Trump tariffs, but Tesla, you know, that's an American manufacturer. They build those in different places around the world as well. And that's what globalization has done. Has that been a good thing? You know, just being a part of the world economy. Trump has done a lot to steer us away from that because he wants vehicles and everything else to be manufactured in the United States, that's sold in the United States. And I kind of like that idea. But is it practical? No, It's really not. The reason it's not practical is because people in a lot of these other countries don't make near what Americans make. And our politics are so screwed up that sometimes it's easier just to open a factory in Mexico or someplace else because they don't have as many regulations. Now, to bring those vehicles into the United States, they have to meet all of our crash standards, safety standards and emission standards, or they can't be sold here. But the manufacturers get all that clarified up front. And then they bring them in here, and they're able to sell them cheaper to a certain extent, or have bigger margins, profit margins, that is. And that's capitalism. This is exactly what happened with the Ford Maverick. It's not built here. It's built in Mexico. Hopefully that doesn't keep you from wanting to buy one. They're flying off the shelves. We can't keep them in stock, especially the hybrids. I was walking through the service department just a few minutes ago, and a guy said, "Hey, Lenny," and I walked over, and he said, "I am loving my Maverick." And I said, "Great, when did you get it?" Because I didn't recognize the fella, and he said, "I got it about 6 months ago." And he was here getting it serviced. He said, "I'm averaging 40.6 miles per gallon. And I absolutely love it. It's a perfect vehicle." I said, it really is for a small vehicle. You've got seating for 5 if they're, small people in the back seat. And you have a bed. I don't need a bed. Well, you could put a cover over that bed and it becomes a huge trunk. That is just a fabulous vehicle for a college student. And plus it gets over 40 miles to the gallon. It's a hybrid. People got hybrid on the brain right now. And that's okay. So what else have I learned? Okay. So we had this guy probably 8 months ago. He wants to order a vehicle from Ford called a F-150 Raptor R. The R means it's really rapid. It's fast. It's got a big horsepower. It's really lifted. It's got all kinds of bumps and curves, and it's just a really fancy truck. So fancy, in fact, are you sitting down? This F-150 on the window sticker, this is no add-on addendum or anything like that. It's $120,000. So he came in, wanted to order one from us, and we said, well, we can order it, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to get it. These are very limited. He says, well, I have connections with Ford. I am a supplier to the Ford Motor Company, or my company is, and I think I can pull some strings and maybe get it. Well, doggone it, he did. He special ordered it from Gateway Ford, my dealership, and it came in 12 days ago, as a matter of fact. We talked right before I went on vacation. He was so excited to get his Raptor. I come back from vacation, and he has rejected it. He said, I don't want it. Well, I was talking to my sales manager, and I said, what happened? And he said, well, it had a flaw in the paint. It had a little bit of dirt in the paint. But we took care of that. We just had to wet sand it a little bit. Shouldn't have been there, but it was there, and we fixed it. I said, okay, but you didn't have to do any paint work, right? No. We just had to wet sand it and then buff it. Took care of it. That sounds awful, but it's not. It's very common. But then on the right rear door, this is the passenger side rear door of this crew cab pickup truck. When you open the door, there was a little dent in the speaker cover. This thing has Bose speakers, and there was a little dent in the speaker cover. And then above that, it looked like something jabbed, something sharp like a screwdriver or something, jabbed underneath the cup holder. And it didn't, I guess it did puncture it a little bit. Really deformed the door panel just on this underside. If you were sitting in that seat, you wouldn't even see it. But he saw it, and he said, I don't want it. This thing's defective. And so, we had no leverage. We didn't ask for a deposit or anything when we ordered it. We weren't even sure we were going to be able to get it. He got it. Now we've got it, and it's unsold. Well, I did a little research today, and those things are trading. Now, I know you're going to have a hard time believing this, but there's people out there that are paying anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 over window sticker for these Raptor Rs. That's how rare they are. What was he paying for it? Window sticker. I mean, he was getting a deal. He could have bought it, turned around and flipped it, and made $20,000. Why didn't he do that? I really don't know. I don't know. So now we're going to sell it. We'll probably sell it this afternoon to somebody, and we'll be able to sell it for a lot more. Why would you do that, Liddy? Well, I've always believed that you sell things for what the market value is. 90% of the vehicles that we sell, new vehicles, you know what the market value is? The invoice price, what we paid for it. Now, how do we make money selling cars for what we paid for it? Well, there's something called holdback, which is a discount. It's a rebate that we get. It runs from anywhere from 1.5% to 3% of the MSRP. So if let's say somebody buys a vehicle with an MSRP of $100,000, then the holdback is 2%. Then we make $2,000, even if we sell it for the invoice price. Now, unless you're buying something that's really scarce, or you've got a really greedy dealer that is holding out for really big prices, then there's pretty much anything out there on the market you can buy for the invoice price. If you walk into a dealership, I would recommend that you say, okay, listen, folks, don't want to go through a bunch of negotiation. I got 4 targets that I'm aiming at. First is what are you going to sell me the car for? What are you going to pay me for my trade? Then we'll talk about financing. I need to know what the terms are that you have, interest rate, terms, so forth. And I'll even look at an extended warranty, gap insurance, if I feel like I'm upside down. Okay, so that's the way we're going to do this. Do you agree to that? The salesperson says, I don't know. I got to talk to my manager. And so the manager comes over. You tell him that same thing. You might run into, I know several dealerships. If you go in and you talk like that to somebody, say, well, you just need to leave. We don't do business that way. Because they don't want to give away cars. They want to make huge profit on every single consumer who doesn't really know any better. There's no reason to be that person. Not if you get the My Car Guru guidebook that I offer for free. All you have to do is send me your email address to 423-552-2020, and I'll email you a copy of it. And then you'll have the ammunition that you need to deal with these people. Now, the Federal Trade Commission is taking care of a lot of the advertising side. Now, let me explain. The Federal Trade Commission is a government agency, and it's one of the good ones, I believe. They're designed to protect consumers from unscrupulous people. In this regard, we're talking about dealer advertising. They sent 87 letters out to the 87 top dealer groups in this nation. A dealer group is a single corporation or individual that owns multiple dealerships, and they could be in the same city, they could be in multiple different cities and states, okay? But you have single ownership. Well, they all got letters saying, okay, guys, no more advertising of new vehicles or used vehicles online without including all the costs to the consumer. Meaning, if you charge a processing fee or a documentary fee, it has to be disclosed and has to be evident. It has to be right there when you're on the page looking at a car online, or if you're watching a TV commercial and you see, that they'll sell a new Maverick for $25,495. They have to say plus a $695 doc fee or a $1,595 doc fee. They have to say that. And they also cannot say that this vehicle can be bought for less with all of these different rebates unless everybody qualifies for all those rebates. And that's very rare for everybody to have served in the military or to be a farmer or to have some other profession that allows you to get a particular rebate. A lot of dealers were doing that. They were listing every rebate that could possibly be applied to a sale price, not include the doc fee, put it in a in the fine print at the bottom of the page, subtract all these numbers, and all of a sudden, man, they're offering a huge discount. I've got this one dealer that I compete with on a regular basis. They say, screw it. That's exactly what they say. We'll advertise it legally on the website, but when they come to our dealership, they're still going to see an addendum on the a sticker beside the sticker. They're still going to see that, and that gives us more room to negotiate. And they still think that's okay. It's not. If you see that, you need to run as fast as you can. I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, I'm back. You know why the dealerships behave the way they do in many cases? It's because, it's one of two things. You have on-site owners who are crooks, or you have absent owners who are good, honest people, but they've hired these people who can make the gross, sell the cars, and bend all the rules as long as the dealer doesn't see it happening. If he sees it happening, then he'll step in and say, "No, don't you do that." And then as soon as he leaves the room, it's the wild, wild west. And folks, it's not hard to see it. It's obvious. You drive onto the lot. You see about 6 or 8 salespeople all standing there staring at you. You get out of your car. They flip a coin, see who's going to wait on you. They come over. Or one guy comes over and says, "Can I help you?" And you say, "Yeah, we're just here looking at cars." "What kind of monthly payment you looking for?" And then if that comes out like in the first 5 or 6 things that the salesperson says, that's when you know you're at a running and gunning, law-breaking dealership for the most part. And those sales managers that are working behind the desk, they're the real bandits. Them and the finance managers that work in the back. They are in cahoots with one another to pull the wool over innocent payment buyers. They're just looking for a monthly payment they can afford. But they fail at hitting the 4 targets. They don't negotiate the deal. They negotiate the payment. And that's, as I've said so many times, why do I keep bringing this up? Because I still see folks that are getting taken advantage of. And I guess there's not enough of them listening to this podcast/radio show. If you've got some young person that is out there and they've just graduated from school and they're going to be buying cars, get them on My Car Guru on the podcast. Tell them to listen to 5 episodes. Find one with a title that applies to what they're trying to do. Have them listen to this one because it's like insurance against a bad car deal. And if you don't like buying insurance, good. Because this one's free. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.